Hello and welcome to the AIGA Design Podcast. This season, we are exploring the theme of design and performance. My name is Lishan Huang, Senior Director of Learning and Programs here at AIGA, the Professional Association for Design.
Hello, everyone. I am Julia Donatello, the Design Competitions and Events Manager at AIGA.
And hello, everyone. My name is Erin, Ezippy Shems. I am the CEO and founder of Ezippy Co.
Erin, thank you so much for joining us on the AIGA Design Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm super excited.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to this conversation as well. Let's get to know Erin a little bit more. So why don't you tell us more about yourself and your company, Ezippy Co., which you've described as a creative operations agency. So what is that as well?
Yeah, so the title that I chose to put on my business cards was Badass and CEO, because when you have your own company, you get to make the rules and do what you want. And I want to have fun, and I want to have that reflected right off the bat for people. So I am a lifelong creative project manager, producer, account manager, operations person. I've been working in the creative field for about 28 years. It'll be 29 this year. Don't let the good looks fool you. I am a little bit older than than you may think. I started work first before I went to college, so I jumped into the corporate world very young. I'm also an inclusivity and mental health advocate. I'm a change agent. I am a realist, and I get shit done. That's how I like to describe myself. So whatever I'm doing, I like to throw myself in it and do the best that I can. For those of you that are familiar with design organizations and corporate levels and agencies and in-house teams, there's usually another side to the design world, and that's the operations side. It's the less sexy side of design, but it's the ones that are in charge of time and money. We help get the projects from start to finish. We help designers along the way to get the work out into the world. So typically your operations team is going to be made up of like a project coordinator, project manager, account manager, maybe traffickers, producers, but we're really the ones that are helping the project get from initial brief stage all the way out to production and into the world. The biggest thing for me about that relationship is that I've seen what it can do for a team and how much you can go further faster together. So I call it the dynamic duo. Having a designer and a creative project manager, really having that trusting working relationship. You've got each other's backs. The PM can clear the path for that designer in order to focus on design. And so really it's about that ebb and flow between the two and working together to do the best work they possibly can. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, I decided to create a creative operations agency. It's what I know, it's what I'm good at, and it's really to help creative and marketing teams with their process, with working relationships to save time, money, and try and make work fun again too.
Awesome. We'll follow up a little bit more about your journey and some of the details of what you do, but my first follow-up is really about just the tone and how you present yourself. You have badass as part of your job title. You've talked about getting shit done, which we love, kind of just honesty and authenticity here on the show and at AIGA. Looking at your website, you've talked about, in your own words, you've been lucky enough to work on cool shit for 3 decades now. And so that's just one example, another example of the kind of copy, the tone that you have on your website and how you reflect your personality, your sense of humor. Can you tell us more about that choice, especially given the often corporate context that you work in and the choice to use that kind of language and use that kind of tone when you present yourself?
Yeah, of course. Good question, Lishan. So I've been very buttoned up, and I've literally dressed the part. I've worn the corporate uniforms. You have to act the part. You put on the suit and tie, and you must be serious and speak a certain way and don't rock the boat. And it never really felt right to me. So when I joined into the design part of it, the creative teams, there's a little bit more freedom there. It was a little bit more permission to be yourself, permission to stand out a little bit more. The artists, they can get away with wearing jeans and, like things like that. So I noticed that it really resonated with me. I really liked being around design and creative people. And so over the years, business culture also started to shift, right? This isn't like the 50s and 60s. Women don't wear dresses and heels every day to go grocery shopping. Men don't wear suits and ties and, vests and hats to jump on an airplane as much as they used to. So with that, things started to shift, and I started to see that there was room to be yourself a little bit more. I also tended to focus on cool industries. I When I went to look for a job or was ready to make a move, I focused on, well, where would I want to work that would be less stuffy, less corporate? So I went to video games. I was in shoes and fashion and hair care and makeup. And I played and worked with, for a roller derby team, and then eventually ended up in toys. So I just like to push the buttons a little bit and push the boundaries. And I decided that, we're not robots. Why should we talk like robots? It's okay to talk like human beings, and sometimes human beings are going to swear, and I don't want to be something I'm not, and we're all adults. You can read the room and understand when is a proper time and place to do that, but at the end of the day, it's okay to just sound like a human, and sometimes humans cuss. So which actually brings me to a question for both of you, and you'll
Yeah.
start to see the reason why. So, Julia and Lishan, if you were a movie character, if you're going to pick one, describe yourself, who or what would that be? So, for me, there was this movie back in 1994 called Pulp Fiction, and there was one of the characters called Winston Wolfe. And the scene is John Travolta's character and Samuel L. Jackson's character had gotten into a bit of trouble. They had an accident in a car and needed to fix up the car in order to get rid of a body, unfortunately, that they had accidentally shot in the car while driving. So they pull off the road, get to a person's house, and they need to fix the situation. So what happens? They call in this character Winston Wolfe, and the greatest quote from it is, you know, as he's there to help them with this situation, John Travolta's character, Vincent's like, a please would be nice because they have a very short amount of time to get something done. And he's like, excuse me? Winston Wolfe looks at him and he's like, look, I solve problems. If I'm curt with you, it's because time is a factor. I think fast, I act fast, and I need you guys to act fast if you want to get out of this. So pretty please, with sugar on top, clean the fucking car. And for me, it really resonated with what it's like to be a project manager or a producer in the creative world. You have so many deadlines, so many things happening. You have to go, go, go constantly. You can still say please and thank you, but if time is of an essence, right? Time is a factor. You have to get things done. And so I resonated with that character, and it's who I am. It's what I'm about. The other part, and then I want to hear about your characters if you want
Yeah.
to share, is I read a book a while back called Swearing is Good for You, and it's The Amazing Science of Bad Language, and it's written by Dr. Emma Byrne. And since I love science, I'm a total science nerd, and I like to swear, I was like, ooh, I want to read this. And in it, she said a few really cool scientific facts about swearing. It increases pain tolerance, it's emotional release, it builds trust, and it shows signs of intelligence and stimulates different parts of our brains. And she even said that when you're at work, swearing, and I'm going to read a quote, swearing can help build teams in the workplace. She said that scientists have shown that teams who share a vulgar lexicon tend to work more effectively together, feel closer, and be more productive than those who don't. So when I started my own thing, I said, you know what? Let's stick to who you are, and you're not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. I'll work with the people that I work with, and that's why I have a free half hour on my website to test each other out. Let's see if this is going to work for each other, and if not, I'd love to recommend you to someone else along the way that might be better suited for you. So you get what you get with me, and sometimes that's going to be swearing.
Awesome.
So yeah.
I love
Julia,
this.
do you know who you would be as a movie character?
Uh, yeah, it's hard. No, first when you said movie character, I was thinking more of like Disney movies and so on.
Sure.
So I
That's a
That.
think,
movie, yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is a movie.
Yeah.
So I think um, I am thinking maybe Ariel from The Little Mermaid, and I'm thinking why. I think there is an interesting aspect of her personality that she's very curious. She's wanting to explore a world that it's not hers. and she has this very strong relationship with, I think it's Sebastian, that's the
Crab.
lobsters, the
Yeah,
crab,
the
yeah. So very loyal to her friend, and also sharing, her thoughts and so on, and very determined to what she wants to it, which is basically getting out of the sea. So exploring like new worlds and the challenges that they can offer. I think that's and curiosity. I think that's a little bit of like rebellious, also like questioning the status quo. I think yeah,
Yeah.
it tells a little bit about me also.
Nice. Lishan?
I have a kind of similar personality character, but a different kind of movie. I was thinking I identify a lot with Anne Hathaway's character in The Devil Wears Prada, Andrea
Mm.
Sachs. So she was like a young journalist who ends up getting this job in fashion, working for Meryl Streep's character, Miranda Priestley. And so even though I am not a young ingenue, I've definitely found myself in lots of life and professional situations where I'm not a true believer or like somebody who's like come up in that space, right? So like I'm a first generation Taiwanese American. I worked and lived in Japan for 3 years after college. I've also worked in Brazil. I've studied in different countries in Europe. And even as like a designer, I'm often working with folks from industries where initially I know nothing about, right? There were folks we worked with in finance and diplomacy and museums where I was not from that space. And so being able to like Ariel, the Little Mermaid, being curious and being able to like learn enough to assimilate a little bit, but maybe not completely assimilate either, and make that choice to be oneself. I think, yeah, I love that movie. By the way, just recently rewatched that the Cerulean monologue that Meryl Streep's character gives about like colors and fashion and how all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Love it. Those are both great examples. Very fun. And agree. I love that movie too. Devil Wears Prada. I rewatch it from time to time. It reminds me of me starting in my early years of having a mentor that taught me some of the good things and some of the not so good things about our industry. So
Very cool, very cool. Also, Erin, I'm curious to learn how a little bit more about how your career started and how you ended up choosing to create and begin your company.
I fell into this. I had moved to San Diego. I was starting school. It was college, 1 year out of high school. And I took a temp job at a video game industry as a receptionist. And the VP of their creative services team had, you know, given me a couple looks and was asking me some questions. And she said, we have a project coordinator position opening up on the team. Would you be interested in it? And I was like, oh, okay, that could be cool. Like, this is a video game company. It was called Midway Games. Some of you may have heard of the video games like Mortal Kombat and NFL Blitz and Gauntlet and Spy Hunter. So, like, it was this really iconic company, a part of Midway, Williams, and Bally. So slot machines and pinball. And I was just like, this is awesome. Okay, I'll take it. So it was the first time that I was really exposed to graphic design, illustrators, programmers, motion capture, voiceover recordings, like a whole new world. Speaking of like Ariel, like a whole new world opened up to me. And I had the chance to learn from professionals that had been taught the old school way. Like this was, before people were really knowing how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. Like, yes, it was around. I was using Quark Express at the time because InDesign wasn't even around. The internet was kind of new. Websites were starting to pop up, emails. So it was really an interesting time to get started. And being around all these designers, it just unlocked something in me. Like I said, I felt like it was a great connection. I felt like I could be myself. And from there, I went on to learn things as much as possible, how to send things to print, how to work with print vendors, how to do event producing. We used to work on trade shows there, like E3 back in the day was this massive event for the video game industry. It was huge. And so we would have to put together booths and travel and do stuff. And I was doing this as like a 19 and 20-year-old while I was going to school. So I was getting a much bigger and better education than what I was going to be a women's studies major, and I did get my degree in it, but it had nothing to do with what I was learning. And I kept going. I kept saying, you know what? I think I want to stay in creative and design and work with these people, and I'm really good at organizing things. So as I left, I went into hair care and beauty, and then the company I was with was bought out by Procter and Gamble, and I saw the writing on the wall. So I said, you know what? I learned how to produce photo shoots for them. That's another feather in my cap. Let's jump ship and become an account manager. Let's go work at an agency instead of being inside in the corporate world on the in-house team. So there I learned how to be an account manager, and I had amazing clients like the San Diego Chargers at the time before they had moved to LA. I had a charter school system in Chicago, a beer company at one point, like all kinds of interesting clients, Sony Electronics, Samsung TVs, things like that. So I really got a chance to hone those skills and learn how to service and be of service to clients, how to help them, do the amazing work they needed to bring to life. Once that ended, I, moved back up to LA, and I wanted to keep going. I thought I was going to go into Hollywood and like work on movies and things. And I was a little too old to start at the bottom. And I was like, being a production assistant is nice, but I think I want to go back into what I've been doing. So I joined Westfield, the real estate company for malls and experiences. And there I went back into being a senior project manager, producer, more photo shoots. Even before that, I had started to learn how to do video shoots and work on commercials. I picked up how to do design, so I learned and taught myself how to use Illustrator and Photoshop. I went on to be an art manager for the San Diego Derby Dolls, which was a roller derby team in the early 2000s. Picked up copywriting, and eventually I landed at Mattel as a project manager producer, and eventually became their senior operations manager.
Thanks for sharing a bit of your journey. Yeah, that's really impressive. I wanted to jump back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that your work now focuses also on mental health advocacy and human centric processes. Could you tell us more about that side of your work? What does that look like? Maybe you could walk us through an illustrative project around something like that.
Being in the industry for as long as I have, I've seen the good and bad. And there's a lot of long hours involved sometimes. And things are starting to shift as people are learning. We all survived a global pandemic that shifted the conversation and how people talk about work-life balance, creating better boundaries. But definitely the design industry tends to be chewed up and spit out quite a bit, right? Designers are expected to work all hours to get something done and delivered to a client. You work through the weekend, you do something 100 times to get it right, and it's exhausting. It's really hard. And so I myself am an overachiever. I used to pride myself on working through the night and through the weekends, and I can do the workload of 2 to 3 people. And management loved me for that. So they wanted me to be available and to do this, but they weren't really doing much to protect me and keep those things from happening. So workloads were increasing. It was very imbalanced. And I just knew that it could be done different. I knew that it could be done better. And I wanted to give teams the chance to have these conversations, be more open, ask HR for support, stop overloading people because it really does affect your mental health. And I happen to have been diagnosed myself with a few mental health things in my late 20s. So I have generalized anxiety disorder, I have OCD, and I have major depressive disorder. So I've been able to work through a lot of that, but it's still part of who I am. So showing up to work, that's also showing up with me some days. So being able to talk about mental health in the workplace is something that's shifting. It's becoming less of a stigma. The younger generations are definitely starting to pick up on that. I can see examples of the different generations within the workplace and how they're dealing with that. But it's something that needs to be discussed. If you're a manager, if you're in charge of a team, you need to be asking your companies for better resources, for better training to help people navigate things in the workplace, because they're not just that person at work, they're a whole human being, and there's a lot to it. So that's where I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to create an operations company that helps creative teams, I want to make sure that that's a part of it. So I wanted to really push back and say companies can do better and need to do better for their employees. I have a few notes that I made. Let me just pull that up real quick about what kind of services and examples for you about what I could do. So let's say you're a creative director, an agency owner, head of a creative services, Marcom, maybe your HR chief of staff, and you see that creative teams are struggling. There's infighting, maybe there's lack of communication, poor working relationships with cross-functional teams, maybe they don't have the right creative director in place and the workload isn't sustainable or there's not set up properly to I've seen that a lot. A lot of teams are understaffed and they don't have the right roles and positions to truly support the team and the workloads, which means a lot of people end up wearing multiple hats and juggling lots of plates. And it's just too much. So I want to go in and help these different groups with their process, do analysis of what they have. Maybe they're over processed, maybe they're under processed, maybe they're wasting a lot of time and energy on things that we can solve and maybe they can't see it. So since I can speak design and I can speak marketing, having someone that is a creative come in to help creative teams, I think is the big difference than just another consultancy coming in saying, you need to structure like this. Here's an org chart. It's more than that. It's human conversations. It's asking them to really talk about the relationships and go a little bit deeper than just here's your print process checklist. Go forth and good luck. It gets a little bit deeper than that.
Now that you brought the conversations and the importance of talking about mental health, I want to jump in a new question, which is regarding the brain rot being the chosen term to summarize the global society last year, so in 2024. So I'm curious to learn more about your perception on how do you see our relationship with technology nowadays, and how do you think this is going to shape our behavior considering the rise of AI-based technologies in the future?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Julia. I have a love-hate with technology. When it works, it's amazing. It's my best friend. I love you, computer. When it doesn't work, it's the bane of my existence. It drives me bonkers. I'm not a first adopter. I like to wait and see how things work before I dive in. I didn't have a cell phone for a long time. I put it off. And then finally, I think I joined the iPhones around the third generation. I don't like social media. I have no Instagram. I've never been on Facebook. I tried MySpace for like a week. I just am very anti social media. I use LinkedIn for networking and to stay plugged in with the people I've worked with over the years. It seems to be the easiest, and I just dabbled in Substack as of the last few months. I think that it's detrimental, especially to the younger generations and the youth spending so much time on social media. AI, I think, can be very helpful in some ways if we train it properly and we're ethical about it. But I think there's also going to see that pendulum swing towards AI and, oh my God, look at all the cool stuff we can do and it's unlocking and saving you so many hours. Like, yes. But then I also see people swinging it potentially the other way and saying, you know what, we're a human-based agency. We don't use any AI for creative. We only use it for administrative purposes. Like I could see something like that coming because analog is back. Kids are into cassette tapes. I'm glad I saved some, but like I don't even have a way to play them. But those kinds of things that you can touch and feel still keep popping up. So it's going to be an interesting journey. But I do think that there's a great meme out there. Somebody said, I want AI to do my laundry and my dishes and not my art. And I agree with that. Like I want to make art. I want to create things. I don't want the machine to create it for me, but there's some shortcuts and things that it can help designers with when it comes to concepting or coming up with things. You can generate stuff so quickly. I see pluses and negatives.
It's a great point. I was reading that now in the beginning of 2025 marks the start of a a new generation, which is called Beta. We're talking a lot about Gen Z, but there is already Alpha generation. I think they're already 15 years old, more or less. And
Yeah.
now starts a new generation, so Beta. How do you think this new generation will look like in comparison with the Gen Z or Gen Alpha? So what do you believe there might be the advantages or challenges that they will bring in yeah, in a couple years or a couple decades actually?
Yeah. Um, so I have a workshop I've developed with a designer friend, and we do talk a little bit about the generational differences when it comes to mental health, and we use the term generational trauma. You know, I was raised by someone who was born during the Depression, and you know, grandparents that were in World War II, and they had a very much different outlook on mental health, and not saying things and sharing things and not into therapy, and you know, being raised by people like that, it gives you a different perspective, and seeing what my parents did versus what our friends who are Gen X, how they're raising their kids, how millennials are raising their kids, and now, you know, Gen Z, Alpha and Beta. It's who knows, honestly, who knows what beta is going to be like, but I hope that they all take the positives and run with it, and they learn from our negatives, just like past generations. Like, we can see what worked, what didn't work, and you know, Gen X is definitely starting to be more open about mental health, and not do the things that our parents did, but almost, again, they swung the pendulum maybe too far with like helicopter parents and things like that. So it's really going to be interesting. I have friends with teenagers now, and seeing what, you know, how they are navigating high school. I have a nephew about to go into college, and you know, there's a lot of similarities and themes that never change, but how they react to it is it's interesting to watch. I can't really say what generation beta is going to be like. What do you think? Lishan, what do you think? Julia?
It's hard to imagine, like, yeah, folks being born today, but I do have like nieces and nephews who are like between 5 and 7 years old among them. And so it's interesting to see, right, that like just awareness about their mental health and mindfulness around that is just more like mainstream, or it's part of their schooling, for example, or just acceptance for people with different like gender identities and sexuality is just like become pretty normalized, at least in the schools and the environments that they're growing up in. So that's a positive thing to see, certainly for me, having grown
Yeah,
up in the 80s and 90s.
right.
But then on the other side, there is like this kind of like this timidity that I see because of like helicopter parenting, or even if their parents aren't helicopter parents, like the general society has become
Yeah,
such, right? And like,
yeah,
you know, for us, it was like, oh, I took the school bus to school and home, and like still walked another half mile to get home from the school bus stop. And it was like normal, right? Or to like play with the neighborhood kids until it was dinner time. And like these are things that like I see young kids today don't really have that kind of thing. Or, you know, they're going to get
yeah,
the police called on their parents if they are like that. So seeing that trade off, right? Of like, in some ways, they're more accepting, but there's also like just way more structure to their lives. That plus like the social media stuff, right? Of like they've
yeah,
just been on social media their entire lives. Whereas like I think Erin, we're probably around the same age, right? We're like the last generation that like half of our childhood was analog, and then
yes,
like the internet came later, kind
yeah,
of thing. And so like with kids born now, it's just like that's all they know.
yeah. I hope that, again, time learnings reports are coming out. We're seeing what it's like for kids that grew up only in social media, and parents that were posting their pictures as babies. And, you know, there's a lot of really interesting studies that are coming out. So I'm thinking that some changes are going to be made and happen. And again, I just hope that each generation takes the good and the bad and learns from it and applies it and gives them a much, stronger fighting chance at life, because it's hard. It's really hard. And, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a parent in today's age. I feel for my friends and families that are raising them, and it's hard. But I hope they learn and grow from past mistakes.
Totally. And I know it's kind of an unfair question to ask you to try to project something 20 years in the future, but maybe one way to uh, help with this is just redirect looking at the present. So this is kind of a half-formed question about what do you see now in the current state of creative work based on your clients and the organizations that you work for? Like, what are some of these trends and patterns that you've seen? Obviously, there's the macro ones like hybrid work. There's a push
Yeah.
for return to office now with more and more big companies pushing for that. We've talked about generations, so there's the perennial media issue, certainly of generational conflicts in the workplace.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are some of the things that you're seeing firsthand?
Yeah. Return to office is definitely a topic that has continues to be in the news and on LinkedIn and all, the different channels you hear about, hybrid, and um, even in the job searches I've done in the past few months. It's still interesting to see what people consider hybrid and how many days a week that is. I feel like a lot of the bigger companies are just following each other. So if, let's say Disney's doing this, then everyone else says, let's do what Disney and Starbucks are doing. So it's a lot of follow the leader in regards to that. These companies have invested in real estate and businesses, and they want people in the office. We hear a lot about the collaboration that can happen when you're in person versus online, and I truly believe it's a balance of both. I think that giving teams the ability to come in and work together when it's truly that, and not just sitting in front of their computer at their desk at the office during another meeting, that they could be doing that at home, like that's bullshit.
Right. If you're all coming back to the office to then just jump on Zoom with people, on the other coast or in another continent, like what was
Yeah.
the point of that, right?
Right, right. Because I do find value in the relationships that can be formed at work. I have friends, creative directors, and people I've known for, 25 years that are still in my life, that these turned into more than just a working relationship. They're friends and they're people I can count on. And, shout out to my Midway Games team. Like, we had a little mini reunion in September. These people have known me since I was 19 years old. And I'm in my 40s now. Like, that's incredible. And I don't know that you would still get that kind of experience just being online. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you and what's right for your family and your needs. And so some people are going to need a remote position. Some people are not going to be able to do that, and they need to go into the office. People that work at a grocery store have to go to the grocery store to do their jobs. This is a privilege to be able to work via a computer. It's not something that everyone gets to do. My husband can't do his job at home. He has to go into a physical location. So we'll watch it. We'll watch the space. But I think that people are going to leave jobs that aren't fitting their lifestyle and what their family needs. The other thing I see a lot is profits over people. So in the last, I was at Mattel for 7.5 years, this is an example, and I survived at least 8 rounds of layoffs in that time. So
So
I
that's like
was,
more than one layoff round a year.
yeah, yeah.
That's staggering.
Staggering. And the do less with more, or do more with less mentality, excuse me, is becoming more prevalent. We're seeing the layoffs in tech, in video game industry, and in all kinds of industries, automotive, all kind. The list just keeps popping up, and it's getting longer and longer with who's laying people off. But then at the same time, you see how much money these companies are reinvesting in stock buyback programs, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on that, and you're like scratching your head going, well, wait a minute, you're not letting teams hire people and staff properly, but you haven't changed the goal and the amount of business you want to do, and you're trying to do it with less people. Like, that's not sustainable. So I do really wonder when that's going to start to bite them in the ass, because it's just been unrelentless. The job market is insane. Trying to find jobs, people are submitting 300, 500 applications and only maybe getting a handful of interviews, getting ghosted. Like, this isn't okay.
And there's
It's,
ghost jobs too, right? That aren't
yeah,
even real
Mm-hmm.
positions. Yeah.
yeah, that shit just has to stop. Like, at some point, people have to take the power back somehow because this just isn't sustainable. One of the other things I see too is with mental health. So during the pandemic, I had started in my one on one meetings with my staff to do mental health check ins because we were going through so much at the time. And I was like, if you need time off, if you need to just get off of the screen, just tell me. I'll support you however you need it. I would tell people if I needed a mental health day, I would tell my team, I'm logging off. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm not in a good space today. And I tried to lead by example. Once we came back into the office, I had weekly project management meetings with my team, and it was a small group, and the ages ranged from about 30 to, let's say, early 60s. One of the staff members that was in the older end of the spectrum age range was not comfortable talking about mental health, and even said to me on our one-on-one, I'm never going to say if I need a mental health break or if I'm having a hard day about that stuff. So I said, fair, totally fair. I want to support you and what you're comfortable with. So I changed the way I said it. I just said, how's everyone's workloads? Are you feeling balanced? Do you need help with something? And so I started to shift how I referred to it, but still trying to get at, do we need to do something to support our colleague who may not be able to get through this week with the way things are? How can we help her have an easier week, or him? So that's something that I noticed a lot with the differences. The younger people had no problem talking about it or saying things. And again, I tried to lead by example by saying, I'm taking a mental health day, everyone. I will be back tomorrow. Please, refer to this person in my absence. So,
I'd like to pivot to the theme of this season's show, which is performance. And so we've like to choose our themes with these words that can mean a lot of different things, so that allows us to explore the different facets. So I'd just love you to riff on this word performance, Erin. Like, what does that mean to you, whether it's performance of your team, as you were just talking about, or other forms of performance that are maybe about, like, not necessarily masking, but maybe playing a different professional character,
yeah.
depending on the context, or, financial performance as well. I think you alluded to that in the profits over people kind of thing. But any thoughts on performance?
Yeah. So when I first found out about the series and what the theme was this year, I immediately went to my project manager brain. Tasks. How many things are we accomplishing? Let's get statistics, numbers, KPIs, meeting deadlines. Like, I went operations. As I thought about it more, I thought about the performances that designers put on and that the teams put on, account managers, to pitch to clients, to pitch to the cross-functional teams, to get people to buy into your idea and your concept and bring them along that journey. Acting and putting on a mask at work, being able to show up when you aren't having a good day or you do have anxiety and depression and you still have to show up and do your job. Like, I went to that way in regards to how to define performance at work. Because really, showing up for work can be one big performance. A lot of people can't bring their authentic selves to work. There's a lot of different reasons why. They may not feel comfortable. They may feel like they're going to be judged for it and they're never going to do it. And as much as, companies say, oh, bring your authentic self. Humans are messy.
Yeah.
we're weird, messy, unique animals. And it's going to show up 100 million different ways when you tell people to be your authentic self. So I think that even though they say that, I think that, you still have to put on an act and you still have to put on a bit of a performance when you're there. The other thing that it brought up for me was fake it till you make it. We hear that a lot in different industries. You have to act as though you have your shit together, even if you don't, and then
Right.
eventually you figure it out, and
Totally.
then you get into imposter syndrome, and there's just a lot of things that we all are processing on any given day. And I think at the end of the day, just whatever you're performing, just try and be a good human and try not to be a dick to other people, and also just give each other a little bit of space and grace to understand, like, maybe you're not always going to show up as your best self and that your performance is going to suck that day. And And that's okay because you can try it again the next day. So,
Yeah, I think there's something there too, going back to this idea of even authenticity is a kind of performance, right? Of like, what
Mm.
is your best self? It could vary on the day based on your mood, your mental health for that day, but also like who you're with, right? In that context, like, we have many authentic selves if you believe in
yeah,
this idea of like us containing multitudes, and that can change over time, right? My authentic self in my 20s is very different from my authentic
totally.
self now in my 40s, right? And then there's just also this idea, in particular folks working in creative industries, right? Whether it's designers, other folks, like there are companies, agencies that say like, oh, we want to embrace this, but then it's just like, how unfiltered do you really want it, or can you really handle that, right? Because I also came up in the agency world, and a lot of it was like, okay, there's the raw creativity and like how the sausage is made, and then
Yeah.
there's the like how account managers then present this in a way that is like acceptable to the clients, and like so the job really is like mediation and performance, and how do
Yeah.
you like filter that in a way.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Julia, do you have examples that come up for you with
I like what
authenticity?
Lishan said about authenticity being a type, it can be a type of performance because you might be closer to your, like, more authentic or more transparent to your team if you feel more comfortable to them or if you feel more connected to it. And also, I think at times it may take time. Like how authentic you are when you start a new job might be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different of when you actually already had the chance to build a relationship and trust them. And so like more of a safe place to be.
Yeah.
And maybe you're more authentic with some people than others and so on. So yeah. And also there's the aspect of power dynamics, if that is especially when we're talking about workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe you're more to some people than others and so on.
Yeah. And then, bring in race and bring in all kinds of other, things on top of it. Like performance is going to vary based on who you are, how you feel. Are you a man? Are you a woman? Like there's a lot of things that people have to still navigate within the workplace that makes this performance and this dance that we have to do like so multifaceted and complicated and just it's exhausting. It's just there's no one answer for any of it. You have to really figure it out for yourself.
So going back to what you do, Erin, you also use this framing on your website of making work suck less. And we've talked already about like some of the trends and some of the things that make work suck, right? And so tell us more about like some of the things that suck about creative work, but also like, do you have any advice that you might want to share with our listeners slash viewers, since we're doing an audio slash video podcast now?
I purposely wrote suck less because I'm not a wizard and I can't make it all completely never suck. Like work is work. We do it because we need paychecks. We do it to support our lifestyles, to support our families. Like there's a reason why we're there. A lot of us don't have the benefit or opportunity to, just work because it's fun, and not all of us can find that passion and make money with their passion. Sometimes you have to do what you need to do to put food on the table. So within design and the creative world, I would say shitty briefs are something that can be fixed, right? People that don't know how to write a good brief, we can fix that. And it can really help make the work suck less, right? That's an easy one. Let's talk about that. Design by committee is another thing that really sucks for designers and in the creative space. We can also work on that too. It comes down to trust, maybe lack of trust from leadership. Like there's a reason why it gets to that point, and I think there's ways that you can start to dive into that and maybe give some of that trust back to the professionals that you've hired and let them do their job and kind of get out of the way. I would say another thing that, can make work suck is when you have not good working relationships with other teams, right? So a lot of times people aren't educated on how to give proper creative feedback. It can be very subjective, it's art, right? But if you have brand standards and guidelines, there's some things that are just not up for debate. There's certain ways to make sure that the brand and the tone is coming through, and you then need to trust the information as a designer that you've been given, and the marketing and sales team need to trust the design team that they're putting forth their best work to do what it is you're all trying to accomplish. Because again, it's a team. It's not us versus them. And I see that quite a bit with marketing teams and design teams. So learning how to be more collaborative, building that trust can really make work suck less, right? Like our marketing teams need to less, make sure that they're not being do as I say and I'm the client, especially if you're an in-house team and you don't have a client agency, setup situation. And also the designers need to be open to feedback and learn how to pull the right information out of the marketing people and keep the art snobbery kind of in check too. There's a lot of sensitivity that can come into play. I see it a lot with the newer designers coming into the workforce that maybe haven't been around the block quite yet as many times. And it can be brutal. So learning how to pull the right kind of information, I think, is another way to make work suck less. A big thing which came up at a conference I went to last October was companies not including creatives in the C-suite, I think is a big thing that could help make work suck less. Having a creative person at that level and being able to represent and make sure that creative is a really big part of a company, I think could help work suck less for sure. And stop sucking the fun out of work and creative. Like Liquid
Yeah.
Death is amazing. Like they're one of my favorite brands I've been watching for the past couple of years because they aren't afraid to have fun and have a personality. And they may not be for everyone, and they're okay with that. And yes, like a drug company, for cancer research or something may not be able to take it to that level, but you can still, when you can and when it's the right place and the right, like have fun again. Stop being so serious and stop sucking the fun out of work. Like that's the other thing. It make work fun again. It's okay. We spend a lot of time there. Like why not make it more enjoyable? And those are things that we can talk to and think about and help make work suck less. Better processes, like take some of the guesswork out of this stuff. Clear, get out of your own way. Like you don't have to overcomplicate things. And I think those are ways that, my company can come in and help teams with like automating the things you can automate and leave more time for fun and time for creative.
I love it. I also get very inspired by humor and
Yes.
light-hearted environments and teams. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we have the similar approach
Yeah.
to that. So
Yeah.
speaking of that and wrapping up our conversation today, we would love to hear what is inspiring you right now, and that could be any type of media or art exhibition. That could be, a movie, a book that you read, or an album that you found out. Anything that you can share.
For me, lately, I fell back in love with writing. So I've been writing a lot since leaving the corporate world and processing my thoughts, and it's really been a good outlet for me. I've been designing a lot of stickers too, which has been fun. Trying to keep my creative brain going and have an outlet while I'm building a business because some of that part's not fun. Being outside and meeting new people and new music is also ways that really inspire me. Travel is a big part of it. And when my husband and I travel, we always love to find museums and different kinds of museums. Like there's a cat museum in Amsterdam that we went to. And then at the same time, we found this amazing street art museum called the Straat Museum in Amsterdam. And I highly recommend that for inspiration for people. It's such an amazing space. And the size of the canvases are just massive. It's this huge like warehouse thing. It's just incredible. So always seeking those kinds of experiences out when we travel really inspires. There's another museum that I went to a couple years ago, and I think it's under renovation, so hopefully it'll open again soon in Sydney. It's called the Powerhouse Ultimo Museum. They have, I think, 4 different locations, and it's the Ultimo Museum. It was just incredible. Again, rooms within rooms and just the way they built the space out and the theme and just all kinds of stuff. Like I just find that so inspiring. I love to learn, and so going to find those special exhibits, those ones that speak to me, because not every museum's my cup of tea, but finding those little special ones really make a difference.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Erin, and sharing some time with us today. To take us out, could you give a call to action to the folks listening to this or watching this? Where can folks find you or connect with you online?
Yeah, so I have a website which you can get to me. It's got a couple forms on it if you want to fill it out, or an email address. So it's ezippyco.com, EZIPPYCO.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Erin Shems or Ezippyco, and you can also check out my writing, my Substack, which is Lost Wallet Theory on Substack. And then lastly, I just want to, say out there to everyone, like if you know someone or you yourself are struggling with mental health, like please check in on your friends, check in on your family. Here in the States, we have the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's available 24/7. You can call, you can text, you can go online and chat, and you just need to dial 988. So check in on your family and friends. They might be performing and appearing that things are okay, and maybe they really aren't. And, just asking, like, are you okay? And showing your support for them can go a long way.
Thanks for that reminder, Erin, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the AIGA Design Podcast. If you watch this video on YouTube, you can also listen to the audio versions wherever you get podcasts, or if you've been listening to the audio version, you can also see the video versions on the AIGA Design YouTube channel, where you can listen and subscribe as well. I'm Lishan Huang. See you next time.